obedience to experts who have studies and clipboards and white lab coats, I think it is a weakness in our social national psyche. And that weakness was shown during the pandemic and the lockdowns. Because look at this headline from climatedepot.com. Climate change blamed for 8,000 gun deaths in new study in Journal of the American Medical Association. So you know it's true. Claims association between temperature and shootings. Joining us now is the editor of climatedepot.com, Marc Morano. Marc, I've never heard this one before. And if there's some expert with a white lab coat and a clipboard telling me it's true, it's got to be true that climate change has caused 8,000 gun deaths. This one I gotta hear. I gotta hear this one. How do they square that circle, Marc?
Well, first of all, you keep in mind, there's doctors in Canada who, for the first time ever, and this is in fall of 2021, diagnosed the first patient as suffering from climate change. You have academics in Australia in a peer-reviewed study calling for climate change to be listed as a cause of death on death certificates. And now you have this study. And here's the interesting thing. This is, as you mentioned, Ezra, this is in the Journal of the American Medical Association, premier medical and public health journal. I'm not on this show hyping up some Greenpeace blogger. I found some obscure, panelist at a Friends of the Earth. No, this is a peer-reviewed study in the Journal of American Medicine, the top flight medical and public health journals of the world. This is appearing. And I'll simplify the study for you in real simple terms. They actually believe that because in summer there's more crime, because global warming is said to be increasing temperatures, we should expect more crime. And this is one of the basis of this study. And this is not a first-time thing. About 2014, a United Nations climate scientist, or actually I shouldn't say climate scientist, but a United Nations affiliated academic did a study claiming that barroom brawls, rapes, vehicle thefts, and all sorts of crime would increase as global warming increased, on that same premise that warmer weather brings more crime. And of course, this is nonsense. You can go back, and I did this at the time in 2014. It may no longer be true, but from the 1970s cooling, when they're worried about a coming ice age, until at least the 2010s, there had been dramatic reductions in crime, both in the United States, Canada, all Western societies. And if you look at that, we warm since the global cooling scare. So the correlation didn't add up there. And of course, the other thing, the obvious thing here that this study doesn't even address are Soros prosecutors, no funding for no prosecution of misdemeanors, and of course, the defund the police movement. There's a lot of other factors besides temperature that deal with crime. Yeah,
it's just such a reach. But of course, where there's money, you will find studies and grant-seeking scientists. I think we all are learning that again on the COVID side. Climate change is the cause of all these heart attacks amongst young men, apparently. Yes. I'd never heard that one before, but they need to misdirect, I think, from the real cause. There's a lot of things that have to do with the crime rates. I mean, I think Rudy Giuliani, as mayor of New York City, probably did more single-handedly to change the crime rate in America than any other factor. He just simply arrested and jailed people for his broken windows theory of James Q. Wilson. Arrest people for the small stuff. You'll build up to catch them for the big stuff. Arrest them for jaywalking. Arrest them for vandalism. And that cleaned up America's largest city, which was one of America's most dangerous cities. That one man did it. And I don't think it was global warming. I think that, here's my question for you. You and I look at this and we laugh. But how many people out there say, well, a scientist said it, an expert said it, someone in a white lab coat and a clipboard said it, so I may as well shock this stranger in the other room. I may as well believe this absurd study. Do a lot of people still believe this, or is this just a little cottage industry of grant-seeking academics looking for some dough?
Well, it's absolutely grant-seeking academics looking for dough on one hand. But on the other, you're going to get 40% of the population to agree. The same way you'll see them double masking when Fauci says it, the same people who immediately comply with all the vaccine mandates, who go along because they think it's for their own good and the good of society. Now, this study actually says, and I'm quoting now, increase in warmer temperatures due to climate change may create environments with higher risk of firearm violence in the future, unquote. So what they're doing here is they're scaring you. So here's the thing. If you don't support the UN Paris Agreement now or the Green New Deal, the message of this study is you are a killer with guns. Instead of being like, if you don't wear a mask, you're a grandma killer. If you don't support lockdowns, you're a grandma killer. Now, if you don't support climate mitigation measures, you're killing 8,000 people because of the increase in gun violence it will cause. And this is how, and the same thing they're doing with COVID and climate. They're now saying that unchecked climate change leads to more viruses. So if you don't support a WHO pandemic treaty, for example, you are now a grandma killer because of that. So what this is doing is it's creating a template, a narrative among that 40%. And here's the key. This is the part that kills us, Ezra. These aren't an inconsequential 40%. These are generally the academic elite, ruling class, and the people in bureaucrats, governments, cabinets, prime ministers, presidents, their staff, and sadly, most of our elected officials. That's the problem, is the 40% that fall for this will gleefully use it as another argument to push their policies to mitigate climate, to mitigate COVID. It's another fear-mongering tactic.
You know, it's probably enough to invoke the Emergencies Act in Canada. That used to be just for national dangers like a revolution or an insurrection. But after the judge ruled it completely legal because there was some horn honking, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a climate emergency that was used as a justification to bring in martial law. That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.